Maya Chen had never imagined that answering a job posting for general aviation assistant would lead to the most impossible challenge of her life. But when tech billionaire Marcus Kane mockingly offered $5 million to anyone brave enough to land his experimental aircraft in a storm that had grounded every other pilot in the Pacific Northwest, something extraordinary happened. The 23-year-old aerospace engineering graduate from a working-class family in Portland stood up in that packed hangar, her voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade, and said 7 words that would change everything. "I can land that plane for you." What followed wasn't just the most dangerous bet in aviation history, but the revelation of secrets that would expose hidden corruption, decades-old cover-ups, and prove that skill doesn't care about wealth, connections, or where you learn to fly. Before we dive deeper, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story captivates you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow we have something even more incredible waiting for you. 2 weeks earlier, Maya pressed her face against the rain-streaked window of her studio apartment, watching another Pacific storm batter the Oregon coast. The eviction notice in her trembling hands felt like a death sentence to everything she'd worked toward since graduating from Oregon State's aerospace program 6 months ago. Student loan payments of $800 per month combined with rent she could barely afford had pushed her to the breaking point. Sarah Chen sat at their tiny kitchen table, still wearing her hospital scrubs from another 12-hour shift at Providence Medical Center. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and worry as she studied the overdue bills scattered across the scratched surface. 30 days, Sarah whispered, smoothing out the legal document for the 100th time. "They're giving us 30 days to find the money or get out." Maya turned from the window, studying her mother's defeated posture. At 48, Sarah looked older than her years, the demanding schedule of an emergency room nurse etched into the lines around her eyes. Working double shifts since Maya's father died in a construction accident 5 years earlier had taken its toll on both of them. "What about that aerospace job at Boeing you interviewed for last month?" Sarah asked quietly, though they both knew the answer. "They went with someone who had connections," Maya replied bitterly. "Apparently, having a perfect GPA and honors in aerospace engineering isn't enough when you're competing against candidates whose parents work in the industry." The name Kane Industries had become synonymous with disruption in the Pacific Northwest. Over the past 3 years, Marcus Kane's technology empire had systematically acquired aviation companies, aerospace startups, and research facilities, transforming them into profit centers that prioritized innovation over employee welfare. Traditional aviation careers had disappeared as Kane consolidated operations and eliminated positions deemed inefficient. Maya walked to the kitchen table and sat across from her mother, her small hands folding together with surprising determination. "There has to be something we can do. Some way to break into the industry without connections." Sarah's laugh held no humor. "Compete with Marcus Kane's empire. Honey, he's worth more than this entire state combined. When he wants something, he gets it. When he doesn't want you around, you disappear." Outside, the wind howled through the gaps in their apartment's windows, a constant reminder of how precarious their shelter really was. Maya had lived in Portland her entire life, surrounded by families just like there's hard-working people doing their best with limited resources. Mrs. Rodriguez next door worked 3 part-time jobs to support her elderly parents. The Kim family shared their 1-bedroom apartment with 6 people. These weren't people looking for handouts. They were the backbone of the community, the nurses and mechanics and teachers who kept society running while others got rich from their labor. "Tell me about Kane Industries," Maya said, settling back in her chair. "What makes him so powerful in aviation?" Sarah sighed, recognizing her daughter's stubborn streak. Once Maya latched onto something, she didn't let go easily. Marcus Kane built his empire from a small software company 15 years ago. Started with aviation management systems, then expanded into aircraft design, pilot training, everything related to flying. Now he controls most of the aerospace jobs on the West Coast. But why aviation? Maya asked, pulling out her laptop. Tech billionaires usually stick to computers and software. Personal obsession, Sarah explained, clearing space on their cluttered table. Kane's been flying since he was 16, owns more aircraft than some airlines. He's built his reputation on being the best pilot money can buy, with access to experimental aircraft that regular aviators never see. Maya studied aviation industry websites with an intensity that surprised her mother. The 23-year-old traced corporate acquisition patterns with her finger, noting how Kane's companies had systematically eliminated competition while consolidating talent under his control. What about the people who used to work for the companies he bought out? Maya asked, where did they go? Rich people don't think about consequences for folks like us, Sarah said bitterly. We're just overhead to be reduced, expenses to be eliminated. Their conversation was interrupted by Maya's phone buzzing with a notification from an aviation job board she monitored obsessively. The posting was unusual, a request for a general aviation assistant at Kane Industries' private airfield, with responsibilities that seemed far more complex than typical entry-level positions. Look at this, Maya said, reading the posting. Aloud, seeking experienced aviator for experimental aircraft operations. Must demonstrate exceptional piloting skills under challenging conditions. Aerospace engineering background preferred. Compensation negotiable based on demonstrated competence. Sarah looked skeptical. That sounds like they want someone with years of experience, not a recent graduate. And why would Marcus Kane hire someone without connections? Maya was already researching the position's requirements, cross-referencing them with her own qualifications. Her aerospace degree included significant flight training, and she'd maintained her pilot's license through part-time instruction at a local flight school. Her skills were solid, even if her resume lacked the prestigious internships that other candidates possessed. Mom, Maya said as Sarah prepared for another night shift at the hospital. What if there was a way to prove I belong in aviation? Something that would force the industry to take me seriously despite my background. Sarah paused in gathering her nursing supplies, turning to study her daughter's earnest face. Honey, people like Marcus Kane don't give chances to people like us. They hire from their own networks. People who already have advantages will never possess. But everyone has something they can't resist, Maya replied. Some challenge that appeals to their ego more than their common sense. After her mother left for work, Maya sat alone in their quiet apartment. Surrounded by textbooks and aviation manuals she'd studied obsessively throughout college. Every page represented knowledge she'd gained despite financial struggles that had forced her to work 20 hours per week while maintaining perfect grades. She opened her laptop and began researching Marcus Kane with the methodical approach she'd learned in her engineering courses. What she found was both impressive and troubling. Kane had indeed built his fortune through legitimate innovation, but his methods had grown increasingly ruthless over the years. News articles detailed small aviation companies destroyed, experienced pilots blacklisted for opposing his business practices, and regulatory officials who tried to investigate safety violations. Finding themselves facing lawsuits they couldn't afford to fight. But Maya also found something else. References to Kane's obsession with aviation challenges, his need to prove his superiority through increasingly dangerous flying competitions. Stories about private bets involving experimental aircraft, weather conditions that grounded commercial airlines, and landing scenarios that tested the limits of human skill. These weren't simple business transactions. They suggested a personality driven by ego and competition, someone who couldn't resist demonstrating his superiority when publicly challenged. The next morning, Maya drove her battered Honda Civic to Kane Industries' private airfield, located 30 miles east of Portland in the Columbia River Gorge. The facility was impressive enough to rival major airports, with multiple runways, maintenance hangars, and aircraft that represented cutting-edge aerospace technology. She parked among vehicles that cost more than her mother's annual salary and walked toward the main office building, acutely aware that her thrift store interview outfit couldn't disguise her working-class background. The receptionist, a perfectly groomed woman in her 30s, looked Maya up and down with barely concealed skepticism. "I'm here about the general aviation assistant position," Maya said, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "The posting said to come prepared to demonstrate flying skills," Maya replied. "I assumed that meant practical evaluation rather than just paperwork. Review." The receptionist's expression shifted slightly, as if Maya's response had surprised her. "Most applicants send resumes through proper channels. Mr. Kane doesn't typically interview candidates personally unless they've been pre-screened by his staff." "Then I guess I'm not most applicants," Maya said, maintaining eye contact despite her nervousness. "I'm here because I believe I can do the job better than anyone else you'll interview." Before the receptionist could respond, a door opened and Marcus Kane himself emerged from his private office. At 45, he carried himself with the confident bearing of someone who'd never encountered a problem money couldn't solve. His pilot's uniform was custom-tailored, complete with insignia from aircraft manufacturers and aviation organizations that most pilots could only dream of accessing. "Is there a problem out here?" Kane asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. Maya seized the opportunity before anyone could respond. "Mr. Kane, I'm Maya Chen. I'm here about the aviation position, because I believe your company needs someone who can fly anything you put in front of them." Kane studied her with interest that seemed more amused than impressed. "Anything I put in front of you? That's quite a claim for someone who looks like they just graduated from college. Oregon State, Aerospace Engineering, graduated summa cum laude 6 months ago," Maya replied. "I've been flying since I was 16, maintained my license through college, and I understand experimental aircraft systems better than most people with twice my experience." The boldness of Maya's statement drew Kane's full attention. He was accustomed to deferential job seekers who emphasized their qualifications carefully rather than making direct challenges to his expertise. "Follow me," Kane said abruptly, leading Maya through corridors lined with photographs of exotic aircraft and aerial scenes from around the world. "Let's see if your confidence matches your abilities." They emerged onto the airfield's main ramp, where dozens of aircraft represented every category of aviation from vintage warbirds to experimental jets. Maya's engineering background allowed her to identify most of the types, noting modifications and systems that suggested serious investment in cutting-edge technology. Kane stopped beside sleek experimental aircraft that Maya recognized as a heavily modified Lancair Evolution. The composite construction and turboprop engine represented performance capabilities that exceeded most civilian aircraft, while custom avionics suggested systems integration that required advanced technical knowledge. "This is the prototype for our next generation of personal aircraft," Kane explained, his voice carrying the pride of someone describing a favorite possession. "Twin turboprops, glass cockpit, weather radar, autopilot systems that most airlines don't have. It's designed for operations that would ground conventional aircraft." Maya walked around the aircraft with professional interest, noting details that revealed both impressive engineering and potential challenges for inexperienced pilots. The sleek design prioritized speed and efficiency, but she could see systems that would require constant attention during challenging flight conditions. "What kind of operations?" she asked, running her hand along the composite fuselage. "Weather penetration, short field landings, high-altitude performance in conditions that separate real pilots from weekend warriors," Kane replied, watching her examine the aircraft. Most people look at this machine and see something pretty. I'm curious what an aerospace engineer sees. Maya pointed to the wing design and landing gear configuration. I see an aircraft that's optimized for performance, but probably unforgiving of mistakes. The power-to-weight ratio suggests it'll climb and cruise impressively. But the wing loading means it'll need precise speed control during approach and landing. Kane's expression shifted from amusement to genuine interest. Most job applicants focused on the aircraft's impressive appearance rather than analyzing its operational characteristics. Maya's technical assessment suggested knowledge that went beyond basic piloting skills. Impressive analysis, Kane acknowledged, but analysis isn't the same as practical ability. Anyone can study aircraft specifications. The question is whether you can actually fly when conditions get challenging. Maya met his gaze steadily. Put me in the cockpit and find out. Kane laughed, a sound that carried more challenge than humor. You want to fly my prototype? Just like that. No training, no checkout, no gradual introduction to its systems. I want to prove that skill matters more than connections, Maya replied. Give me 30 minutes to study the systems and I'll demonstrate flying ability that your connected candidates can't match. The directness of her challenge appealed to Kane's competitive instincts. He'd built his reputation on identifying talent that others overlooked, though he'd never considered someone from Maya's background as a serious candidate. 30 minutes, Kane agreed, pulling out his phone to check the weather forecast. But we'll start with basic patterns around the airport. If you can handle those competently, we'll discuss more challenging operations. Maya spent the next half-hour studying the aircraft systems with the methodical approach she'd learned in engineering school. The glass cockpit was more complex than the training aircraft she was familiar with, but the underlying principles were identical to systems she'd studied extensively in her avionics courses. Kane returned with a flight instructor, who'd been observing their interaction with professional skepticism. At 38, Captain Jennifer Walsh carried herself with the no-nonsense bearing of someone who'd spent 15 years teaching aviation to students whose confidence often exceeded their abilities. Captain Walsh will be monitoring your demonstration. Flight Kane explained. She's checked out more pilots in this aircraft than anyone else, and she'll determine whether your skills match your confidence. Maya nodded respectfully, understanding that Walsh's evaluation would be more important than Kane's personal opinion. Flight instructors developed an eye for recognizing genuine competence versus dangerous overconfidence, and Maya needed to prove she belonged in the former category. Ms. Chen, Walsh said formally, Mr. Kane tells me you believe you can fly this aircraft based on 30 minutes of system study. That's either impressive confidence or dangerous arrogance. It's engineering. Training applied to aviation systems, Maya replied. I understand how the components work together, which means I can operate them safely even if I haven't memorized every procedure. Walsh consulted her clipboard, clearly skeptical, but willing to give Maya a chance to prove herself. We'll start with engine start, taxi, and basic traffic pattern work. If you demonstrate adequate competence, we can discuss more advanced maneuvers. Maya climbed into the left seat with movements that felt natural despite the aircraft's unfamiliar layout. Her hands found the controls instinctively, while her eyes scanned the instrument panel with systematic precision that impressed both Kane and Walsh. Engine start checklist, Maya announced, beginning the procedures she'd memorized during her study period. Her movements were deliberate and confident, showing none of the hesitation that characterized pilots flying unfamiliar aircraft. The twin turboprops spooled up with mechanical precision, their synchronized operation creating harmonics that indicated proper engine health. Maya monitored oil pressure, exhaust gas temperature, and electrical systems with the attention to detail that separated professional aviators from casual pilots. Tower, November 7 Forkslow, India, requesting taxi for local flight. Information Charlie, Maya transmitted. Her radio work crisp and professional. Kane and Walsh exchanged glances as Maya taxied toward the active runway with taxi technique. That suggested genuine experience rather than academic knowledge. Her speed control was precise, her turns were smooth, and she demonstrated situational awareness that kept her clear of other aircraft operations. Asterisk. She moves like she's been flying this aircraft for months, Walsh observed quietly. That's either natural ability or she's done more research than she admitted. Maya completed her run-up procedures with systematic thoroughness, testing each system to ensure proper operation before committing to takeoff. Her checklist work was professional quality, demonstrating the disciplined approach that characterized competent aviators. Tower, November 7 4, Kilo India, ready for departure. Maya transmitted. Asterisk, November 7 4 Kilo India, runway 36, cleared for takeoff. Maya advanced the throttle smoothly, feeling the aircraft accelerate with authority that confirmed her assessment of its performance characteristics. The transition from ground roll to flight was seamless, her control inputs perfectly coordinated to maintain centerline while achieving optimal climb attitude. Kane watched from the passenger seat as Maya executed a traffic pattern that would have impressed commercial airline pilots. Her altitude control was precise, her spacing from other aircraft was professional, and her radio communications demonstrated familiarity with controlled airspace procedures. Request permission for some advanced maneuvers. Maya transmitted to the tower. Steep turns, slow flight, and simulated engine failure approaches. Walsh leaned forward with increased interest. Most pilots avoided challenging maneuvers during demonstration flights, preferring to play it safe rather than risk revealing limitations. Maya's request suggested confidence that went beyond basic flying skills. November 7 4 Kilo India, approved for aerobatic practice area. Maintain appropriate altitude separation. Maya climbed to 4,000 feet and began a series of maneuvers that showcased both her flying skills and her understanding of the aircraft's capabilities. Her steep turns were perfectly coordinated, maintaining altitude within commercial standards while demonstrating precise control of bank angle and airspeed. Execute a simulated engine failure, Walsh instructed, her hand hovering near the throttle. Controls Maya immediately configured the aircraft for single-engine operations, her response revealing knowledge of emergency procedures that most pilots acquired only through extensive training. Her approach to the airport was stable and precise, demonstrating the kind of emergency handling that saved lives when real failures occurred. Outstanding, Kane acknowledged as Maya completed a perfect landing. That was flying quality I don't see from pilots with 10 times your logged hours. Walsh looked stunned by what she'd witnessed. Maya, where did you learn to fly like that? Your technique suggests professional instruction that most college students can't afford. Maya shut down the engines and turned to face both evaluators. I worked as a flight instructor during college to pay for my own training. Teaching other people to fly forces you to understand every system and procedure thoroughly. The explanation satisfied Walsh's professional curiosity while revealing the dedication that had allowed Maya to develop exceptional skills despite limited resources. Kane found himself impressed by someone who'd achieved competence through determination rather than inherited advantages. Ms. Chen, Kane said formally, you've demonstrated flying ability that exceeds our position requirements. The question is whether you're interested in challenges that go beyond routine aviation operations. Maya studied Kane's expression, recognizing the moment when her aviation demonstration had transformed into something more significant. What kind of challenges? Kane smiled with anticipation that suggested he'd found exactly what he'd been looking for. The kind that separate real aviators from people who merely hold pilot licenses. Are you interested in proving that exceptional skill can overcome any obstacle? As they walked back toward the hangar, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension about what Kane might propose. She'd succeeded in demonstrating her flying abilities, but something in his tone suggested that the real test was yet to come. The afternoon brought an unexpected development when Kane led Maya to a private conference room where several of his senior staff members were reviewing weather forecasts and aircraft performance data. The meeting had the atmosphere of operational planning rather than routine employment discussion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kane announced to the assembled group, "I'd like you to meet Maya Chen, our newest pilot. She's just demonstrated flying skills that I believe qualify her for our most challenging projects." Maya found herself facing a room full of experienced aviation professionals who studied her with curiosity mixed with skepticism. She recognized several faces from industry publications, test pilots, aerospace engineers, and aviation executives whose opinions carried significant weight in the Pacific Northwest's aviation community. Dr. Richard Foster, Kane Industries' chief engineer, leaned forward with technical interest. "Ms. Chen, Marcus tells us you've analyzed our experimental aircraft's performance characteristics based on visual inspection. That's quite unusual for someone without access to our technical specifications. Engineering principles apply regardless of specific aircraft," Maya replied. "Once you understand how lift, thrust, weight, and drag interact, you can assess any aircraft's probable performance envelope." The response impressed Foster, whose own background included aerospace engineering degrees from institutions that Maya couldn't have afforded to attend. Her analysis demonstrated practical application of theoretical knowledge that many graduates never achieved. Kane consulted his weather display, which showed a massive Pacific storm system approaching the Oregon coast. The meteorological data indicated conditions that would challenge even the most experienced pilots. With wind speeds, visibility restrictions, and turbulence that typically grounded all but essential flights. "Maya," Kane said, his voice carrying the anticipation of someone about to propose something extraordinary. "I have a proposition that could change your financial situation permanently, but it would require demonstrating flying skills under conditions that most pilots wouldn't attempt." Maya felt her pulse accelerate as she realized Kane was offering exactly the kind of opportunity she'd hoped to find. What kind of proposition? Kane walked to the conference room's windows, which provided a clear view of the approaching storm clouds. "That weather system will arrive here in approximately 6 hours. Winds gusting to 60 knots, visibility down to minimums. Turbulence that'll stress any aircraft to its design limits." The meteorological description painted a picture of flying conditions that would be challenging for airline crews in modern jets, let alone experimental aircraft flown by relatively inexperienced pilots. Maya understood the implications immediately. "Most of our pilots have already declined to fly in those conditions," Kane continued. They cite safety concerns, insurance limitations, the usual excuses people make when faced with genuine challenges. I studied the weather forecast herself, noting wind directions and speeds that would create crosswind landing conditions exceeding the limits most pilots would attempt. The visibility restrictions would require precision instrument flying that left no margin for error. "What exactly are you proposing?" Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew. Kane turned from the window with an expression that combined business calculation with personal challenge. "I'm proposing a test of skill versus conditions. If you can land our most advanced experimental aircraft in tonight's storm, demonstrating the kind of flying that separates exceptional aviators from ordinary pilots, then you'll earn more money than most people make in a decade." The room fell silent as everyone processed the magnitude of what Kane was suggesting. Maya felt the weight of an incredible opportunity balanced against risks that could end her aviation career before it truly began. "How much money?" Maya asked quietly. Kane smiled with satisfaction. recognizing that he'd found someone willing to consider what others had rejected as impossible. $5 million. Enough to solve any financial problems you might have and establish yourself permanently in the aviation industry. The figure was so large that Maya had difficulty processing its implications. $5 million would eliminate her student loans, secure her mother's future, and provide resources for pursuing any aviation career she chose. But it also represented a challenge that could be fatal if her skills weren't equal to the conditions. Dr. Foster leaned back in his chair, his expression reflecting concern about the safety implications of Kane's proposal. Marcus, even our most experienced test pilots have declined to fly in predicted conditions. Asking a recent graduate to attempt something that experienced aviators won't consider seems like an opportunity to prove that fresh training and natural ability can exceed years of cautious experience, Kane interrupted. Maya has already demonstrated flying skills that surprised everyone in this room. The question is whether she has the courage to back up those skills when everything is on the line. Maya looked around the conference room at faces that reflected mixtures of admiration, concern, and skepticism about what she was being asked to attempt. The aviation professionals understood the technical challenges better than anyone, which made their worried expressions particularly meaningful. What specific aircraft and what specific landing requirements? Maya asked, her engineering background demanding precise parameters before she could make an informed decision. Kane walked to a wall-mounted display showing detailed specifications for an aircraft that Maya recognized as the most advanced experimental design in his fleet. The prototype we'll call Phoenix 1. Twin turbofan engines, fly-by-wire controls, avionics that exceed anything in civilian aviation. You'll need to land it here tonight during the peak of the storm, demonstrating precision that proves exceptional skill under impossible conditions. The aircraft specifications were impressive enough to capture Maya's professional interest despite the challenge's obvious dangers. Phoenix 1 represented technology that most pilots would never have opportunities to fly, with performance capabilities that could redefine personal aviation if successfully developed. Captain Walsh, who'd been listening to the discussion with growing concern, finally spoke up. Maya, you've demonstrated impressive flying skills today, but what Marcus is proposing goes far beyond normal piloting operations. Storm flying requires experience that can't be gained through study or simulation. Kane interjected. You possess natural ability that transcends conventional training limitations. Some pilots are born with situational awareness and aircraft control that others never develop, regardless of experience. Maya found herself facing a decision that would determine the course of her entire life. Accept Kane's challenge and potentially earn financial security beyond her wildest dreams, or decline and return to the struggle of finding employment in an industry that seemed designed to exclude people from her background. I need to understand the safety provisions, Maya said carefully. What emergency procedures, backup systems, weather monitoring capabilities? Kane's expression suggested he'd expected exactly that question from someone with her technical background. Full instrument landing system, weather radar, backup power systems, emergency GPS approaches, plus ground crews standing by with rescue equipment if anything goes wrong. The safety measures were comprehensive enough to address Maya's immediate concerns while demonstrating that Kane understood the risks involved. His proposal was dangerous, but not suicidal. Challenging, but not impossible for someone with appropriate skills. Dr. Foster consulted his technical specifications, clearly wrestling with professional responsibility that conflicted with his respect for Kane's judgment. The aircraft systems are designed to handle the proposed conditions, but they've never been tested under actual storm scenarios. We'd be using Maya as a test pilot for experimental operations, which makes success even more valuable, Kane replied, proving that Phoenix 1 can operate in conditions that ground conventional Aircraft would establish performance credentials that no amount of laboratory testing could achieve. Maya realized that Kane's challenge served multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment. Successful completion would provide test data for his experimental aircraft, while demonstrating capabilities that could revolutionize personal aviation. Her participation would contribute to aerospace advancement rather than merely risking her life for money. When would this flight take place? Maya asked, studying the weather forecast that showed storm conditions intensifying throughout the evening. Tonight at 2100 hours, Kane replied. Peak wind conditions, maximum turbulence, visibility at minimums. If you can land Phoenix 1 safely under those circumstances, you'll have proven something that no other pilot has attempted. The timeline gave Maya 6 hours to prepare for the most challenging flight of her life. 6 hours to study unfamiliar aircraft systems, review emergency procedures, and mentally prepare for conditions that would test every skill she possessed. Maya, Captain Walsh said quietly, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already demonstrated flying ability that qualifies you for excellent positions throughout the industry. Maya looked at the weather display showing the approaching storm, then at the aircraft specifications that represented technology she'd dreamed of flying since beginning her aerospace studies. The decision wasn't just about money or career advancement. It was about proving that exceptional skill could overcome any obstacle. That determination mattered more than background or connections. Mr. Kane, Maya said formally, meeting his gaze with determination that surprised everyone in the room. I accept your challenge. The announcement triggered immediate activity as Kane's staff began preparations for in-flight operation that would test both human skill and machine capability under the most demanding conditions possible. Maya felt a mixture of excitement and terror as she realized she'd just committed to something that would either establish her aviation career permanently or end it before it truly began. As the meeting dispersed and staff members hurried to their various responsibilities, Kane approached Maya with an expression that combined respect with anticipation of witnessing something extraordinary. Maya, he said quietly, you've just agreed to attempt something that experienced test pilots have declined. I hope you understand the magnitude of what you're about to face. Maya nodded, studying the storm clouds that were already beginning to darken the afternoon sky. I understand the challenge, Mr. Kane. The question is whether you understand what you're about to witness. As she left the conference room to begin her preparation, Maya felt the weight of an impossible challenge balanced against the opportunity of a lifetime. In 6 hours, she would either prove that skill and determination could overcome any obstacle, or she would learn the limits of her own abilities under conditions that offered no forgiveness for mistakes. The real test was about to begin. The next 4 hours transformed Maya's life into an intensive crash course in experimental aviation that pushed every limit of her technical knowledge and flying experience. Kane's engineering team surrounded her with technical manuals, system specifications, and performance data for Phoenix 1. While the approaching storm grew stronger with each passing hour, Dr. Foster led Maya through Phoenix 1's revolutionary fly-by-wire control system, which interpreted pilot inputs through computer processors rather than direct mechanical linkages. The technology was years ahead of anything in civilian aviation, borrowed from military fighter aircraft and adapted for experimental civilian use. Traditional aircraft respond directly to control inputs, Foster explained, guiding Maya through the cockpit's advanced displays. Phoenix 1's computers analyze your intentions and execute the optimal control responses. It's designed to prevent pilot error, but it also requires understanding how the system interprets your commands. Maya absorbed the technical briefing with characteristic intensity, her aerospace engineering background, allowing her to grasp concepts that would have confused pilots without her educational foundation. The fly-by-wire system was elegant in theory, but complex in practice. requiring trust in computer systems that could override pilot inputs when they detected dangerous conditions. What happens if the computers malfunction? Maya asked, studying. Backup control systems that seemed inadequate for manual flight operations. There's a manual reversion mode, Foster replied, though his hesitation suggested limited confidence in that option. But Phoenix 1 wasn't designed for traditional flying techniques. The aerodynamics assumed computer-assisted control for stability. The revelation added another layer of complexity to Maya's challenge. She would be flying an aircraft that depended on systems she'd never used, in weather conditions that would challenge even familiar aircraft. Success would require mastering new technology, while dealing with meteorological violence that grounded experienced pilots. Captain Walsh approached with weather updates that painted an increasingly grim picture of the conditions Maya would face. Wind speeds were intensifying faster than forecast, while visibility was deteriorating ahead of schedule. The storm was proving more severe than even pessimistic predictions had suggested. Current conditions at the airport show winds gusting to 45 knots with visibility down to 3/4 of a mile, Walsh reported. By 2,100 hours, we're expecting sustained winds of 50 knots gusting to 70, with visibility potentially dropping below landing minimums. Maya studied the meteorological data with growing appreciation for the challenge's difficulty. Crosswind landing techniques that worked in normal conditions became inadequate when wind speeds exceeded aircraft design limits. She would need to compensate for forces that could overwhelm Phoenix 1's control authority. Despite its advanced systems, Kane appeared in the briefing room carrying flight gear that had been custom-fitted for Maya's small frame. Equipment included a flight suit with integrated survival gear, helmet with advanced communication systems, and safety harnesses designed for experimental aircraft operations. "Your equipment," Kane announced, setting the gear on the briefing table. "Everything's been configured for tonight's conditions, including emergency locators, in case we need to find you after a forced landing." The casual reference to crash scenarios reminded Maya that she was about to attempt something with genuine life-or-death consequences. Kane's preparation was thorough, but it couldn't eliminate the fundamental risks of flying experimental aircraft in storm conditions that challenged the laws of physics. Maya suited up with movements that felt surreal, transforming from unemployed college graduate to test pilot in the span of hours. The flight gear fit perfectly, suggesting that Kane had been planning this challenge longer than he'd admitted. Every piece of equipment was state-of-the-art, designed for operations that most pilots never attempted. Dr. Foster continued the technical briefing while Maya familiarized herself with Phoenix 1 systems. The aircraft's avionics were more sophisticated than anything she'd encountered, featuring displays that integrated weather radar, terrain mapping, and flight path optimization in ways that required constant attention to understand. "The approach will be fully automated until the final 200 feet, Foster explained, pointing to displays that showed the aircraft's intended flight path. "Phoenix 1's computers will handle navigation, speed control, and basic flight path management. Your job is monitoring systems and taking over for manual landing when the automation reaches its limits." Maya nodded, though she was already formulating backup plans that didn't rely on computer systems that might fail under storm conditions. Her engineering training emphasized redundancy and manual capability, principles that seemed absent from Phoenix 1's design philosophy. Kane consulted his watch and weather displays, noting the deteriorating conditions that were arriving ahead of schedule. "We need to begin pre-flight procedures. The weather window is narrowing faster than expected." Maya followed Kane and his team to the hangar, where Phoenix 1 waited under bright lighting that revealed every detail of its advanced construction. The aircraft was beautiful in the way that only perfectly engineered machines could be. Its composite construction and aerodynamic refinement, representing millions of dollars in development costs. She walked around Phoenix 1 with systematic precision, performing the pre-flight inspection that her life would depend on in the challenging hours ahead. Every rivet, panel, and system component received scrutiny that would have impressed commercial airline standards. Engine intakes clear, control surfaces responsive, landing gear properly configured, Maya reported, working through checklists that Kane's engineers had adapted for storm operations. Her inspection was methodical and professional, demonstrating the disciplined approach that separated competent aviators from those who relied on luck. The hangar doors opened to reveal weather conditions that were already approaching the limits of safe flight operations. Rain lashed the airfield with intensity that reduced visibility to hundreds of yards, while wind indicators showed gusts that would challenge any pilot's control skills. Kane's ground crew wheeled Phoenix 1 onto the ramp with procedures that protected both aircraft and personnel from the deteriorating weather. Maya climbed into the cockpit as rain drummed against the composite fuselage, creating a sound like machine gun fire that emphasized the storm's growing violence. Phoenix 1 systems check, Maya announced over the intercom, beginning startup. Procedures that brought the experimental aircraft to life with electronic precision. The twin turbofan engines spooled up with mechanical authority, their synchronized operation creating thrust that could overcome the wind forces trying to move the aircraft. Kane occupied the right seat as safety pilot and observer, his presence providing both moral support and emergency backup in case Maya encountered situations beyond her experience. His own flying skills were legendary in aviation circles, though he'd never attempted anything as challenging as what Maya was about to face. Tower, Phoenix 1, requesting IFR clearance for experimental approach procedures. Maya transmitted, her radio work remaining professional despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Phoenix 1, cleared for departure runway 18. Climb and maintain 3000 contact approach on 124.7. Came the controller's response, his voice reflecting awareness that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Maya advanced the throttles and felt Phoenix 1 accelerate with authority that confirmed her assessment of its performance capabilities. The aircraft lifted off into conditions that immediately tested both machine and pilot. With turbulence that would have grounded conventional aircraft, the initial climb was a struggle against wind shear that threw Phoenix 1 around like a toy. Despite its advanced flight control systems, Maya felt the computer-assisted controls fighting to maintain stable flight, while natural forces tried to tear the aircraft apart with invisible violence. Experiencing severe turbulence, Maya reported, her voice steady despite the physical punishment she was enduring. Aircraft systems responding normally, maintaining climb attitude. Kane watched Maya's technique with professional admiration, noting her smooth control inputs and systematic scan of flight instruments that demonstrated competence under pressure. Her flying was textbook perfect, despite conditions that would have overwhelmed less skilled pilots at 3,000 feet. Maya leveled off and began reviewing approach procedures that would bring her back to the airport under conditions that were deteriorating by the minute. The weather radar showed precipitation cells that looked like mountains of water suspended in the sky, each one capable of destroying aircraft that entered unprepared. Beginning approach setup, Maya announced, configuring Phoenix 1 for the instrument approach that would test every skill she possessed. The aircraft's computers handled navigation and basic flight path management, but she could feel the systems struggling against wind forces that exceeded their design parameters. Kane's voice came through her headset with updates that confirmed her worst fears about the weather's intensity. Winds now sustained at 55 knots, gusting to 75. Visibility 3/4 of a mile and decreasing. Tower is reporting wind shear on final approach that's exceeding aircraft certification limits. The meteorological briefing painted a picture of conditions that would challenge military aircraft, let alone experimental civilian designs. Maya realized she was attempting something that bordered on aerodynamically impossible, flying an untested aircraft and weather that grounded everything else in the Pacific Northwest. Phoenix 1. Approach control. You're cleared for ILS approach runway 18. Be advised winds are 210 at 55, gusting to 75. Visibility 3/4 mile in heavy rain. Approach at your own risk. The controllers. Warning emphasized that Maya was now operating beyond normal safety margins, in conditions where emergency services might not be able to respond if something went wrong. She was truly on her own, dependent entirely on her skills and Phoenix 1's advanced systems. Maya began the instrument approach with precision that would have impressed airline training captains. Her technique, flawless despite turbulence that threw the aircraft around like a cork in a hurricane. The fly-by-wire controls were performing admirably, compensating for wind gusts that would have overpowered conventional aircraft. Localizer alive, glide slope captured, Maya reported, following the electronic signals that would guide her down through the storm to the runway that she couldn't yet see. Every instrument in the cockpit demanded constant attention as conditions tested the limits of both human and machine capability. Kane monitored backup systems while Maya flew the approach, his experienced eye noting performance parameters that suggested Phoenix 1 was operating at the edge of its design envelope. The aircraft was handling the challenge better than he'd expected, but they were still far from safe on the ground. At 1,000 feet above the ground, Maya encountered wind shear that nearly exceeded Phoenix 1's ability to compensate. The aircraft dropped suddenly as downdrafts slammed it toward the earth, while crosswinds tried to push it off the approach path that led to the runway. Significant wind shear. Recovering, Maya transmitted, her control inputs smooth and precise, despite emergency conditions that would have panicked inexperienced pilots. The fly-by-wire system responded to her commands with computer-assisted precision, fighting to maintain the approach path that would bring them safely home. Kane watched altitude and airspeed indicators fluctuate wildly as Maya battled conditions that would have defeated most aviators. Her technique was exceptional, demonstrating the kind of flying that separated true professionals from people who merely held pilot licenses at 500 feet. Maya could finally see the runway lights through rain that looked like a gray wall moving horizontally across their flight path. The visual reference was minimal, but it confirmed that Phoenix 1 was properly aligned despite wind forces that continued trying to push them off course. Runway in sight, continuing approach, Maya announced, taking manual control from the automated systems that had reached their operational limits. From this point forward, success would depend entirely on her ability to fly Phoenix 1 with precision that left no margin for error. The final approach was a masterpiece of flying technique as Maya compensated for crosswinds that exceeded anything she'd encountered during training. Phoenix 1 responded to her control inputs with mechanical precision, its advanced systems providing just enough assistance to make the impossible approach merely extremely difficult. Kane held his breath as Maya crossed the runway threshold, with Phoenix 1 crabbed into the wind at an angle that looked impossible for safe landing. Her timing would have to be perfect, correcting for crosswind just as the main wheels touched down, or the aircraft would be thrown off the runway by forces beyond any pilot's ability to control. Maya executed the crosswind correction with textbook perfection, aligning Phoenix 1 with the runway centerline just as the wheels made contact with pavement. The landing was firm but controlled, demonstrating flying skill that would have impressed test pilots from major aircraft manufacturers. Phoenix 1 down and safe, Maya transmitted, her voice carrying relief and satisfaction that she'd successfully completed something that aviation experts would have declared impossible. Just hours earlier, the aircraft rolled out normally, despite wind conditions that continued trying to push it off the runway. Maya taxied toward the hangar with professional technique that completed one of the most challenging flights in civilian aviation history. Kane's ground crew secured, Phoenix won against winds that could have damaged the aircraft if proper precautions weren't taken. Kea shut down the engines with procedures that reflected her growing familiarity with systems that had seemed foreign just hours earlier. Outstanding flying, Kane acknowledged as they climbed down from Phoenix 1. That was aviation excellence under conditions that would have grounded airline crews. You've proven something that I wasn't sure was possible. Maya felt exhaustion and exhilaration in equal measure as she realized she'd successfully completed Kane's challenge. The $5 million prize seemed almost secondary to the satisfaction of proving her capabilities under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Dr. Foster approached with data recordings from Phoenix 1's systems, his expression reflecting amazement at what the instruments had captured during Maya's storm approach. The aircraft performed flawlessly, but the piloting technique was extraordinary. Maya compensated for conditions that exceeded our computer models. The technical validation confirmed that Maya's success hadn't been luck or favorable conditions, but genuine flying skill applied under circumstances that tested every limit of human and machine capability. She'd proven that exceptional ability could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Captain Walsh joined the group with professional respect that transcended her earlier skepticism about Maya's qualifications. That was flying technique I've rarely seen from pilots with decades of experience. You handled conditions that would have challenged military test pilots. As they walked back toward the hangar, Maya felt the weight of an incredible achievement balanced against exhaustion that came from hours of intense concentration under life-threatening conditions. She'd successfully completed something that would establish her reputation permanently in the aviation industry. Kane led the group to his office where legal documents waited to formalize the $5 million payment that Maya had earned through her exceptional flying. The paperwork represented financial security that would transform her family's circumstances permanently. Maya, Kane said formally, you've demonstrated flying ability that exceeds anything I've witnessed in 20 years of aviation involvement. The $5 million is yours, along with a permanent position in our experimental flight test program if you're interested. Maya studied the contracts that would change her life forever, understanding that she'd accomplished something that went far beyond simple financial gain. She'd proven that skill and determination could overcome any obstacle. That exceptional ability mattered more than background or connections. The storm continued, raging outside Kane's office windows, but Maya felt only satisfaction as she signed documents that would secure her family's future, while establishing her career in the most advanced areas of experimental aviation. She'd taken the ultimate challenge and emerged victorious through pure flying skill. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities and challenges, but tonight belonged to a young woman who'd proven that impossible dreams could become reality when supported by exceptional preparation and unwavering determination to succeed against any odds. The flight that had seemed impossible just hours earlier would now be remembered as the moment when Maya Chen established herself as one of the most skilled pilots of her generation. 3 months after the storm landing that changed everything, Maya stood in the cockpit of Phoenix 2 at Edwards Air Force Base, her test pilot wings gleaming on her flight suit as she prepared for the most important demonstration of her rapidly advancing career. At 24, she'd become the youngest civilian test pilot in American history. Her exceptional skills officially recognized through programs that had never before considered someone with her background. The military brass surrounding her included generals and aerospace executives who traveled from across the country to witness Maya's evaluation of Phoenix 1's successor aircraft. Her reputation had spread throughout the aviation industry following detailed reports of her storm landing that aviation experts were still analyzing for insights into advanced flying techniques. Remember, Maya, Colonel Patricia Richards said, reviewing the test flight parameters one final time. This isn't just about proving Phoenix 2's capabilities. The Pentagon is evaluating whether civilian test pilots can contribute to military aircraft development programs that have traditionally been restricted to service members. Maya nodded, understanding that her performance would determine opportunities for an entire generation of civilian aviators who'd been excluded from the most advanced areas of aerospace development. Her success could open doors that had remained closed since the early days of experimental flight testing. Kane Industries had been transformed by the publicity surrounding Maya's achievement. The experimental aircraft program that had struggled for recognition was now attracting contracts from defense contractors, airlines, and international aerospace companies eager to access technology that Maya had proven under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Dr. Foster approached with technical briefings that revealed Phoenix 2's revolutionary capabilities. The aircraft incorporated lessons learned from Maya's Stormflight with improved fly-by-wire systems, enhanced weather penetration equipment, and structural modifications that addressed limitations discovered during her original challenge. Phoenix 2 represents the next generation of experimental aviation, Foster explained, guiding Maya through systems that exceeded anything in current military aircraft. Your storm landing provided data that allowed us to optimize everything, from control algorithms to structural stress limits. Maya absorbed the technical information with expertise that had developed through months of intensive test pilot training. Her aerospace engineering background, combined with practical flying experience under extreme conditions, had created a unique skill set that military and civilian organizations competed to access. The Phoenix program had attracted attention from aerospace manufacturers worldwide, with companies offering contracts that would establish Kane Industries as a major player in advanced aircraft development. Maya's flying had proven that experimental aircraft could operate safely under conditions that grounded conventional designs, opening markets that hadn't existed before her demonstration. Kane himself had been transformed by the success of Maya's challenge. The billionaire entrepreneur who'd initially offered $5 million as an ego-driven bet had discovered that exceptional talent could generate returns far exceeding simple financial calculations. Maya's abilities had created value that measured in hundreds of millions rather than single-digit millions. Maya, Kane said, joining her pre-flight briefing. Phoenix 2 incorporates everything we learned from your original flight, plus advances that should make today's demonstration significantly safer than your storm landing. Maya studied the aircraft specifications with appreciation for engineering improvements that addressed every limitation she'd encountered during her weather challenge. Phoenix 2 was faster, more stable, and equipped with systems that would make demanding flight operations routine rather than exceptional. The test flight would demonstrate Phoenix 2's capabilities to military evaluators who were considering civilian aircraft for specialized missions that required performance beyond traditional military designs. Success could lead to contracts that would revolutionize both Kane Industries and Maya's own career prospects. General Patricia Wang, representing the Air Force's Experimental Aircraft Division, approached Maya with professional respect that reflected her growing reputation throughout the aerospace community. Military test pilots had initially been skeptical of civilian capabilities, but Maya's documented achievements had overcome institutional resistance. Ms. Chen, General Wang said formally, "Your storm landing has been analyzed by our best test pilots. The consensus is that you demonstrated flying skills that would have challenged our most experienced aviators. Today's evaluation will determine whether civilian pilots can contribute to military aircraft development." Maya felt the weight of representing an entire community of civilian aviators who'd been excluded from military programs despite possessing skills that could advance aerospace technology. Her performance would either open new opportunities or confirm traditional barriers between civilian and military aviation. The pre-flight briefing covered test parameters that would push Phoenix 2 through maneuvers designed to evaluate its suitability for military operations. Maya would demonstrate high-altitude performance, extreme weather penetration, precision landing capabilities, and emergency procedures that proved aircraft reliability under combat-like conditions. Captain Jennifer Walsh, who'd become Maya's primary flight instructor and mentor, reviewed emergency procedures that covered situations far more challenging than civilian flying typically encountered. Military test flights required preparation for scenarios that could develop without warning into life-threatening emergencies. Remember your training, Walsh advised, checking Maya's equipment one final time. Military evaluators expect perfection under pressure. Any hesitation or technical error will be interpreted as insufficient preparation for their standards. Maya suited up in equipment that represented the pinnacle of aviation safety technology. Her flight suit included life support systems designed for high-altitude operations, emergency ejection capabilities, and communication equipment that would maintain contact with ground controllers regardless of flight conditions. Phoenix 2 waited on Edwards' main runway, its sleek profile representing millions of dollars in development costs and months of engineering refinement. Based on lessons learned from Maya's original challenge, the aircraft was beautiful in the way that only perfectly designed machines could be, its every line optimized for performance that exceeded current aviation standards. Maya's pre-flight inspection was methodical and comprehensive, demonstrating the systematic approach that had characterized her flying since her first demonstration for Kane. Every component received scrutiny that reflected her understanding that military evaluators would accept nothing less than absolute professionalism. Phoenix 2 systems nominal, Maya reported, completing startup procedures that brought the experimental aircraft to life with electronic precision. The advanced engines spooled up with authority that promised performance capabilities she was eager to explore. General Wang and her evaluation team positioned themselves in the control tower where they could monitor every aspect of Maya's demonstration flight. Their assessment would determine whether Phoenix 2 met military standards and whether civilian test pilots could contribute to national defense programs. Edwards Tower, Phoenix 2 requesting clearance for experimental test flight, full performance evaluation, Maya transmitted, her radio work reflecting the professional standards that military aviation demanded. Phoenix 2 cleared for takeoff runway 04. Climb and maintain flight level 250. Contact test control on tactical frequency. Came the controller's response, his voice reflecting awareness that they were witnessing something significant in aviation history. Maya advanced the throttles and felt Phoenix 2 accelerate with authority that confirmed her expectations about its improved performance. The aircraft lifted off into clear desert air that provided perfect conditions for demonstrating capabilities that weather had obscured during her original storm landing. The initial climb revealed Phoenix 2's exceptional performance characteristics. As Maya pushed the aircraft through maneuvers that tested its high-altitude capabilities, the improved engines and aerodynamic refinements allowed climb rates that exceeded military fighter aircraft, while maintaining stability that made precise control possible at extreme altitudes. Phoenix 2 reaching flight level 40. All systems nominal, Maya reported, leveling off at altitudes where few civilian aircraft could operate effectively. The thin air and extreme conditions provided the perfect environment for demonstrating Phoenix 2's advanced capabilities. General Wang monitored Maya's performance through telemetry data that revealed every aspect of the aircraft's operation. The precision of Maya's flying, combined with Phoenix 2's exceptional performance, was exceeding military expectations for civilian experimental aircraft. Maya began a series of maneuvers that showcased both her flying skills and Phoenix 2's advanced capabilities. High-speed passes, precision formation flying with military aircraft, and emergency procedures that demonstrated the kind of reliability required for military operations. Initiating simulated combat maneuvers, Maya announced pushing Phoenix 2 through aerobatic sequences that tested both aircraft and pilot under conditions that approximated military mission requirements. Her control was flawless, despite G-forces that would have challenged experienced military pilots. The demonstration continued with weather penetration tests that recalled Maya's original storm landing. Though under controlled conditions, that allowed careful evaluation of Phoenix 2's improved systems. She flew through artificial weather cells created by military equipment, proving that the aircraft could operate in conditions that grounded conventional military designs. Kane watched from the observation area as Maya demonstrated flying capabilities that exceeded his most optimistic projections for the Phoenix program. Her skills had developed dramatically through months of intensive training. While Phoenix 2's performance validated design concepts that had seemed theoretical just months earlier, Dr. Foster monitored engineering data that revealed Phoenix 2 systems operating flawlessly under conditions that stressed every component to design limits. Maya's flying technique was maximizing the aircraft's capabilities while maintaining safety margins that impressed military evaluators. Phoenix 2. Demonstrate emergency landing procedures. General Wang commanded. Testing Maya's ability to handle catastrophic failures under conditions where mistakes could prove fatal, Maya immediately configured Phoenix 2 for simulated engine failure. Her response demonstrating emergency procedures that had been drilled into her memory through months of intensive training. Her technique was textbook perfect, showcasing flying skills that would save lives when real emergencies occurred. The simulated emergency landing was executed with precision that impressed military observers who were accustomed to evaluating the best pilots in the world. Maya's approach was stable and controlled, demonstrating the kind of emergency handling that separated exceptional aviators from merely competent ones. Outstanding performance. General Wang acknowledged as Maya completed the emergency procedures and returned Phoenix to 2 normal flight operations. That was flying technique that meets our highest standards for military test pilots. The validation from military leadership confirmed that Maya had successfully proven civilian capabilities that could contribute to national defense programs. Her achievement opened doors that had remained closed to civilian aviators since the early days of experimental flight testing. Maya continued the demonstration with precision landing exercises that showcased Phoenix 2's ability to operate from minimal runway facilities. Her technique was flawless as she touched down on designated spots with accuracy that would have impressed carrier-based naval aviators. Captain Walsh monitored Maya's performance with pride that reflected her own role in developing the flying skills that were now impressing military evaluators. The young woman who'd started as an unemployed college graduate had evolved into one of the most skilled test pilots in the country. As the formal evaluation concluded, Maya landed Phoenix 2 with the same precision that had characterized every aspect of her demonstration flight. The aircraft touched down smoothly, completing a test flight that would be remembered as a watershed moment in civilian-military aviation cooperation. General Wang approached Maya as she shut down Phoenix 2's systems, her expression reflecting professional respect that transcended traditional barriers between civilian and military aviation. Ms. Chen, you've demonstrated capabilities that exceed our requirements for military test pilot certification. We'd like to discuss opportunities for civilian participation in classified aircraft development programs. The offer represented opportunities that Maya had never imagined when she first answered Kane's job posting months earlier. Her skills had opened doors to the most advanced areas of aerospace development, where civilian expertise could contribute to national defense while advancing aviation technology. Kane joined the group with satisfaction that reflected both personal and professional vindication. His investment in experimental aircraft had been validated by Maya's exceptional performance. while her abilities had created business opportunities that would sustain Phoenix program development for years to come. Maya, Kane said formally. General Wang and her team have expressed interest in contracting Phoenix aircraft for military evaluation programs. Your flying has proven that our technology meets the highest standards in aviation. The military? Contracts would transform Kane Industries from experimental startup to major aerospace contractor, while providing Maya with opportunities to test the most advanced aircraft designs in development. Her career had evolved from desperate job seeker to leading test pilot in less than a year. Dr. Foster approached with preliminary data from Phoenix 2's test flight, his expression reflecting amazement at the performance capabilities Maya had demonstrated. The aircraft systems recorded parameters that exceeded our design projections. Maya's flying technique maximized performance while maintaining safety margins that impressed military evaluators. 3 weeks later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at the Experimental Aircraft Association's annual convention, her keynote address drawing aviation enthusiasts from around the world. The young woman who'd started as an unknown job applicant had become a symbol of achievement that inspired pilots and engineers across the aerospace industry. Excellence in aviation isn't about connections or inherited advantages, Maya told the assembled crowd. It's about preparation, determination, and the courage to attempt what others declare impossible. Every challenge is an opportunity to prove that exceptional skill can overcome any obstacle. Her speech reflected lessons learned through months of intensive training and real-world testing under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Maya's journey from unemployed graduate to internationally recognized test pilot had proven that aviation excellence was accessible to anyone willing to commit to the necessary preparation. The audience included aerospace executives, military leaders, and aviation enthusiasts who recognized Maya as a pioneer in experimental flight testing. Her achievements had opened doors for an entire generation of aviators while advancing aircraft technology through practical demonstration of theoretical capabilities. Sarah Chen sat in the front row, her expression mixing pride and amazement at her daughter's transformation from struggling college graduate to internationally recognized aviation expert. The financial security from Maya's challenge victory had allowed Sarah to reduce her nursing hours and pursue educational opportunities that had been impossible when they faced eviction. Kane Industries had been transformed by Maya's achievements into one of the leading experimental aircraft companies in the world. Military contracts, international sales, and licensing agreements had created value that measured in billions rather than millions, all flowing from Maya's willingness to attempt what others declared impossible. The Phoenix program had evolved into a comprehensive aerospace development initiative that employed hundreds of engineers, test pilots, and support personnel. Maya's original storm landing had proven concepts that now generated revenue streams spanning multiple countries and applications. General Wang approached Maya after her presentation, carrying documents that would formalize civilian participation in military aircraft development programs. Ms. Chen, based on your demonstrated capabilities, we're prepared to offer civilian test pilot positions in our most advanced aircraft programs. The military recognition represented validation that transcended simple career advancement. Maya's achievements had proven that civilian aviators could contribute to national defense, while advancing aerospace technology through skills that complemented rather than competed with military expertise. As the convention concluded and attendees dispersed to their various destinations, Maya reflected on the journey that had transformed her life through a combination of preparation, opportunity, and determination to succeed regardless of obstacles. Her story had become inspiration for countless others facing their own seemingly impossible challenges. Captain Walsh joined Maya as they prepared to depart for their next test flight assignment, their partnership having evolved into one of the most successful pilot-instructor relationships in aviation history. Maya, you've achieved more in 1 year than most pilots accomplish in entire careers." Maya smiled, studying the aircraft that waited for their next demonstration flight. "Captain, this is just the beginning. Every flight teaches us something new about what's possible when you refuse to accept limitations imposed by others." The experimental aircraft program that had started with Kane's impulsive $5 million challenge had evolved into a comprehensive aerospace initiative that would influence aviation development for decades. Maya's willingness to attempt the impossible had created opportunities that extended far beyond her personal success. As they climbed into their aircraft for another test flight, Maya looked out over the desert landscape that had witnessed her transformation from desperate job seeker to leading test pilot. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But today belonged to someone who'd proven that exceptional achievement was possible when skill met determination. The Phoenix program continued expanding into new areas of aerospace development, with Maya's reputation attracting the most talented engineers and pilots from around the world. Her original storm landing had become legendary in aviation circles, inspiring others to attempt challenges that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Kane approached the aircraft as Maya completed her pre-flight preparations, his expression reflecting satisfaction with investments that had exceeded every projection. "Maya, the Pentagon wants to discuss expanding civilian participation in classified aircraft programs. Your flying has opened doors that we never imagined." "Possible." Maya nodded, understanding that her achievements had created responsibilities that extended beyond personal success. Her skills had proven civilian capabilities that could contribute to national defense while advancing aerospace technology through collaboration rather than competition. As they lifted off into the clear desert sky, Maya felt the familiar thrill of flight combined with satisfaction that came from proving exceptional ability under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Her journey from unemployed graduate to internationally recognized test pilot had demonstrated that impossible dreams could become reality through preparation, courage, and unwavering determination to succeed. The aircraft climbed toward testing altitudes where Maya would continue pushing the boundaries of experimental aviation, her skills opening new possibilities for aerospace development, while inspiring others to attempt their own impossible challenges. Her story had become proof that excellence was accessible to anyone willing to commit to the necessary preparation and courage. 5 years later, Maya stood on the flight deck of the world's first civilian spaceplane, her astronaut wings reflecting achievements that had seemed impossible when she first answered Kane's job advertisement. The young woman who'd started by landing an experimental aircraft in a storm had evolved into humanity's leading pilot for the next frontier of aerospace exploration. The impossible challenge that had begun with $5 million had created value that measured in the advancement of human knowledge and capability. Maya's willingness to attempt what others declared impossible had opened doors to achievements that would benefit generations of explorers who would follow her path to the stars. Her journey was far from over, but she'd already learned the most important lesson of all, that with enough preparation, courage, and determination to succeed regardless of obstacles, even the most impossible dreams could become stepping stones to achievements beyond imagination. The end.